Alright, everyone. Today we're actually going to be looking at marine turtles, mammals, and seabirds. This chapter ties together three very different vertebrate lineages that all have made evolutionary returns to the ocean. We'll start with marine reptiles, move into seabirds, and finish with marine mammals. Each group shows its own fascinating balance between land ancestry and marine adaptations. Marine reptiles are air-breathing vertebrates that rely on lungs rather than gills. Most are ectothermic, meaning their body temperatures depend on the environment, which limits them to warm tropical or subtropical waters. Their bodies are covered with scales for protection, and even though many spend most of their lives in the seawater, reproduction usually drives them back to land. The major groups we'll highlight include sea turtles, sea snakes, and marine iguana, and both saltwater and the American crocodile. Let's start with the sea turtles, one of the most charismatic but the most imperiled group. All living species are either threatened or endangered. Endangered meaning that they're at serious risk for extinction, while threatened species are on the path towards that status if trends continue. Their population decline is largely due to human activity. Many harvest adult turtles for meat, collect eggs for food, and develop nesting beaches. Many turtles die in drift nets or swallowing floating plastic bags, mistaking them for jellyfish. There are 7 recognized species, possibly 8 if the green turtle is split into the Pacific and the Atlantic forms. There are the green leatherback, loggerhead, hawksbill, olive ridley, Kemp's ridley, and Australian fatback. Each species has its own distribution and dietary preferences, but they all share the same streamlined body and powerful flippers that make them strong and open ocean swimmers. Despite differences in size and behavior, they all face similar threats from human activity and climate change. The turtle shell, or carapace, is actually fused to its ribs, so unlike land turtles, they can't retract into it. Their jaws are powerful but toothless, adapted to crushing or tearing food. Like other reptiles, sea turtles are poikilotherms and ectotherms, but the leatherback is a unique partial endotherm that can keep its body temperature several degrees above the water around it. This ability lets it dive into cold northern waters and hunt prey far beyond the reach of other turtle species. Now let's talk about how these turtles feed. Sea turtles are carnivorous, eating sponges, crustaceans, and mollusks, depending on their species. The green sea turtle is a vegetarian of the group. It grazes on seagrass and algae, playing a vital role in keeping those habitats healthy. The leatherback, which is the largest species, reaching up to 9 feet long and over 2,000 pounds, feeds mainly on jellyfish. It can dive to depths greater than 2,000 feet in search of prey, which is remarkable for that reptile. Sea turtles have fascinating reproductive strategies. Mating takes place in the open ocean where fertilization is internal. Females can actually store sperm, so one clutch of eggs may have many fathers. They're not monogamous and typically breed every 2 to 4 years. When it's time to lay eggs, females must return back to the very beaches from which they were born. They crawl ashore at night, dig a nest, and with their big back flippers and carefully deposit their eggs above the high tide line to prevent flooding. Each clutch can actually contain over 100 eggs. The incubation period averages around 60 days, but it also depends on temperature. Warmer sand speeds up development, while cooler temperatures slow it down. The eggs have leathery shells that become brittle as they near hatching, making it easier for the baby turtles to emerge. Once the hatchlings break free, they instinctively scramble towards the bright lights in the horizon, which should be the reflection of the moon in the ocean, but artificial lights often leads them astray. One of the most fascinating things about turtle reproduction is temperature-dependent sex determination. The sex of the hatchling isn't controlled by genes, but by the incubation temperatures of the nest. Each species has a pivot temperature that produces about half males and half females. Temperatures above that produces mostly females, while lower temperatures usually produces males. This mechanism works well in stable environments, but global warming threatens to skew sex ratios heavily towards females, which could be disastrous for future populations. Moving on from the turtles, let's explore the sea snakes. These reptiles are beautifully adapted for life in the ocean. Their bodies are laterally flattened, almost ribbon like, and they use their paddle shaped tails for swimming. There are about 70 known species found exclusively in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. They're usually around 3 to 4 feet long and spend nearly their entire lives at sea, rarely coming to shore. Most sea snakes give birth to live young, a condition known as oviparous, meaning that the eggs hatch inside the mother's body before giving birth. A few species still return to land to lay eggs, but that's rare. Sea snakes are carnivorous, feeding mainly on fish and fish eggs. Their venom is extremely potent, related to that of the cobras, yet they're generally not aggressive towards humans. They have small mouths and fangs positioned towards the front of their mouth, which makes it hard for them to bite large prey or even people. Now let's talk about the saltwater crocodile, often called the salty. This species is the largest living reptile and a formidable predator. It's found in the northern Australia, Southeast Asia, and islands in the western Pacific. Saltwater crocs can live in estuaries, mangroves, swamps, rivers, and even in the open ocean. They'll eat almost anything they can actually catch: fish, birds, mammals, and occasionally humans. While they can exceed 30 feet in length, most individuals are closer to 20. These crocodiles are an apex predator wherever they occur. The American crocodile is a bit smaller and less aggressive than the Australian relative, but still impressive. It tolerates salt water well, which is why it's found along tropical coasts and lagoons in Florida, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. Males can grow up to 20 feet long, though most average about 14. They mainly feed on fish and are considered a vulnerable species due to habitat destruction and pollution, especially in coastal wetlands where they breed. Finally, we have one of the most unique reptiles on Earth. The marine iguana of the Galapagos Islands is the only seagoing lizard in existence. While it spends much of its time basking on rocks, it dives into the cold, nutrient-rich waters to graze on seaweed. These dives lower its body temperature dramatically, so afterwards it returns to shore to warm up on the rocks. This constant shift between sea and land shows just how finely adapted the species is to both environments. That wraps up our marine reptiles. Each of these species reflects in different stages in its evolutionary experiment of returning back to the ocean. Some, like the sea turtles, are almost entirely marine, while others, like the iguana, still straddles both worlds. Now we'll shift our attention to the seabirds, the organisms that, while still nesting on land, rely heavily on the ocean for their food and survival. Seabirds are a remarkable link between the land and the sea. They nest on land but rely heavily on the ocean for its food. Like mammals, they are homeothermic and endothermic, meaning they maintain a stable body temperature through metabolism. Their feathers are coated with oil from special glands, making them waterproof and insulating against the cold. These adaptations allow them to survive long flights in cold waters that could challenge most other birds. The hard-shelled eggs of seabirds gives them a reproductive advantage compared to reptiles, whose leathery eggs are most vulnerable. Many species form large breeding colonies on cliffs, islands, or shorelines, where they can safely raise their chicks away from the land predators. Some are monogamous and mate for life, showing complex social behaviors like synchronized courtship dances, vocal calls, and cooperative parenting. Migration is also a key behavior. Many species travel thousands of miles between feeding and breeding grounds each year. Penguins are perhaps the most extreme of all the seabirds. They lost the ability to fly, but their wings have evolved into strong flippers for swimming. They spend much of their time in the ocean hunting for krill, squid, or fish, and come ashore mainly to breed. Most species live in Antarctica or sub-Antarctic regions, where they stay warm thanks to thick layers of feathers that trap air and fat layers beneath the skin. Males and females share the duties of incubating eggs and feeding chicks, making them highly cooperative parents. Beyond penguins, there's incredible diversity among seabirds. Tube noses like albatrosses and petrels can glide for days using ocean winds. Pelicans use their expandable throat pouches to scoop up fish, while cormorants dive underwater using their wings for propulsion. Frigidate birds soar effortlessly for hours. Gulls and terns feed along coasts, and shorebirds probe the sand for small invertebrates. This diversity of feeding strategies reflects how rich the ocean supports life at every level of the food web. Now moving on to the marine mammals. They're the most completely adapted vertebrates to the marine life. They're homeothermic endotherms, meaning they regulate body temperatures through internal metabolism. Most have thick layers of blubber for insulation and energy storage. Their young develop through viviparous reproduction with a placenta that nourishes the embryo. They nurse their young with milk from mammary glands and often exhibit complex behaviors, intelligence, and strong social bonds. Their large range relative to their body size supports learning and communication. Marine mammals are divided into four main groups: the pinnipeds, like sea lions, seals, and walruses; the carnivores, like sea otters, marine otters, and polar bears; the sirenians, like manatees and dugongs; and the cetaceans, the whales, dolphins, and porpoises. Each group represents different evolutionary paths into the life at sea. Some, like sea otters, are still closely tied to land, while others, like whales, spend the entire lives in the water. Let's start with the pinnipeds. This group includes about 35 species of seals, sea lions, and walruses. They're predators that feed mainly on fish, squid, and shellfish. Pinnipeds breed on land but return to the ocean after giving birth. Many have delayed implantation, which is a reproductive strategy that allows the embryo to pause development so the birth aligns with the mother's return to the land. They prefer regions with shallow water and abundant food, usually in colder climates. Their fore and hind limbs are modified for flippers, giving them excellent swimming ability. Most pinnipeds thrive in cold water thanks to thick layers of blubber, but some tropical species like the Hawaiian and Mediterranean monk seals are now critically endangered. In fact, the Caribbean monk seal hasn't been seen since the 1950s. Human exploitation and habitat loss has severely reduced populations of many pinniped species. Despite that, their population in some regions, like California sea lions, has recovered well under protective laws and conservation efforts. The walrus is one of the most recognizable pinnipeds. Both male and females have large tusks made from ivory, though males are longer and thicker. They lack external ears, and despite their bulk, they can actually rotate their hind flippers to walk on land like sea lions. Walruses feed mostly on bivalve mollusks, especially clams, but they also eat worms, snails, and crabs, and even the occasional fish. They live in the Arctic waves and migrate with the shifting ice packs. Reproduction includes delayed implantation, and females give birth every 2 years, with both mating and nursing taking place in the water. So far, we've seen the pinnipeds balance between land and sea life, but some marine carnivores have gone even further in their adaptations. The sea otter, for instance, lives almost entirely in the ocean, yet lacks the thick blubber layers of seals or whales. Its survival depends on the incredibly dense fur coats and high metabolism to stay warm. There are three subspecies of Anhydra lutris: the Asian, Alaskan, and California otters. The Asian population ranges along northern Japan and Siberia, while the Alaskan otter often comes to shores to rest. The California sea otters, which many of us know from the Monterey Bay, spends nearly its entire life at sea. Otters are critical to their ecosystems by feeding on sea urchins. They prevent those urchins from overgrazing kelp forests, maintaining balance in these habitats. Without otters, kelp forests can collapse into what scientists call urchin barrens. Closely related is the marine otter, Loncha felina, which lives along the Pacific coast of South America. Unlike the sea otter, it spends much of its time on rocky shores, feeding on small invertebrates and crustaceans. It's endangered today because of overhunting for its fur and habitat loss due to coastal lines. Together, these two species remind us that even small predators can play massive ecological roles in maintaining the structure and productivity of coastal ecosystems. The polar bear's Ursus martitus is technically a terrestrial animal, but it is so dependent on sea ice and marine prey that it is classified as a marine mammal. It is the largest large land carnivore on Earth. Its fur appears white, but each hair is actually translucent, allowing light to refract through. Beneath the fur lies black skin that absorbs heat. They have smaller ears and longer necks than other bears, both adaptations for conserving body heat. Males are larger than females, and adults require about 2 kilograms of fat each day to maintain their energy reserves. Polar bears spend much of their lives on drifting ice, hunting seals, especially ringed and bearded seals. Their diets also include walruses, small whales, fish, and even birds or kelp when they prey is scarce. They have a gestation period of around 8 months, including a delayed implantation period, and mothers nurse their cubs for about 2 years. Sadly, melting sea ice caused by climate change is shrinking their hunting grounds and threatening their survival, making them one of the most visible symbols of global warming impact on our wildlife. Next, we move on to the gentler group of the marine mammals, the sirenians, which include the manatees and the dugongs. There are large, slowly moving herbivores that spend their lives grazing on seagrass and freshwater vegetation. Manatees include 3 species: the West Indian, the West African, and the Amazonian manatees. The dugongs, found in East Asia to the Pacific Islands, is the only other living member of the group. Despite their size, they're actually very graceful swimmers with paddle-like tails and front flippers used for steering. Sirenians lack hind limbs and have horizontal tails similar to whales. They can grow up to 15 feet long and weigh over 1,300 pounds. Manatees consume up to 9% of their body weight in vegetation each day, about 50 pounds of plants for an average adult. All 4 species are either endangered or threatened, primarily due to the boat collisions, habitat loss, and populations. They reproduce slowly, reaching maturity around 5 years old and giving birth to a single calf every 2 to 5 years after a year-long gestation. Now we come to the cetaceans: whales, dolphins, and porpoises. These are the most completely aquatic of all the mammals. Their front limbs have evolved into flippers, and their tails form a powerful horizontal fin called a fluke that propels them through the water. Their nostrils have migrated to the top of their heads, forming 1 or 2 blowholes for breathing. These adaptations allow them to live, feed, and even give birth entirely in the ocean, with no need to return to land. Cetaceans are divided into 2 suborders: the Mystidae, the baleen whales, and the Odontocetes, the toothed whales. Baleen whales have fibrous plates that hang from their upper jaws and are used to filter small prey from the water. They have 2 blowholes and are generally large. Toothed whales, by contrast, have conical teeth and single blowholes. They're more active hunters, feeding on fish, squid, and sometimes other mammals. This group includes dolphins, porpoises, orcas, sperm whales, and many others. Baleen whales are true filter feeders. They take enormous mouthfuls of water filled with krill and small fish, then push the water out through the baleen, which traps the food. Species like the blue, gray, right, and humpback whales are all members of this group. Despite their massive size, their diet consists of mostly tiny organisms. Their feeding drives huge nutrient cycles in the ocean, as their movements mix surface and deep waters, redistributing nutrients and support plankton growth. Toothed whales, or the Odontocetes, are active predators. Their teeth are designed for grasping and tearing rather than chewing, which makes sense when you think about their kind of prey they catch: fast, slippery animals like fish and squid. Dolphins have conical, interlocking teeth, while porpoises have more spade-shaped ones. This group also includes orcas, sperm whales, belugas, and narwhals, and river dolphins. Many of these species are highly social and intelligent, living in pods with complex hierarchies and cooperative hunting strategies. Sadly, several species are now threatened or endangered due to the past and ongoing whaling, fishing gear entanglement, and noise pollution. Echolocation is one of the most extraordinary adaptations in the animal world. Toothed whales produce a series of rapid clicks and travel through water. These sound waves bounce off objects and return as echoes, allowing the whales to build a detailed acoustic map of its surroundings. The melon, which is a fatty structure in the forehead, focuses outgoing sounds, while returning echoes are received through the lower jaw and transmitted to the inner ear. By measuring how long it takes for a sound to return, the whale can tell the distance, shape, and even textures of an object, an essential skill for hunting in dark or murky waters. Beyond echolocation, marine mammals are famous for their vocalization and social behaviors. Think of the bark of a sea lion or the hunting songs of humpback whales that can travel hundreds of miles through the ocean. Many of these sounds serve multiple functions like communication, navigation, and mating. They also engage in play, which is more than fun, in a way of strengthening bonds or practicing survival behaviors. Their large brains allows for curiosity, problem solving, and learning from experience, traits we associate with higher intelligence. Whales often leap out of the water and crash back down in a behavior known as breaching. Scientists still debate exactly why they do it. It could be to remove parasites, communicate over long distances, or simply for enjoyment. Another common behavior is spy hopping, where a whale rises vertically in the water to observe its surroundings. These active surface display reminds us that marine mammals are highly aware, responsive, and socially connected creatures. Migration is another defining aspect of cetacean life. Some whales, like the gray and humpback whales, make some of the longest migrations of any animal on Earth. They travel thousands of miles between cold, nutrient-rich feeding grounds and warm tropical seawaters, where they breed and give birth. These migrations are carefully timed and seasonal changes, ensuring that mothers and calves remain in the safest possible conditions during early development, while adults can later return to rich feeding areas. Cetaceans and many other marine mammals display intricate social behaviors. Pods often consist of relative individuals who cooperate in hunting, navigation, and protection. When one member of a pod becomes sick or injured, others may help it to the surface for breathing or even accompany it to shallow waters. This kind of care and empathy is rare in the animal kingdom and shows the depth of social bonding in these species. Unfortunately, this same loyalty can sometimes lead to mass strandings where healthy animals follow an ailing leader onto shore. Marine mammals invest tremendous energy in parental care. Calves are nurtured and protected for months or even years. Mothers feed them with nutrient-rich milk that allows rapid growth, and many species, social groups help in guarding and teaching the young. This cooperative care ensures that the calves learn migration routes, hunting techniques, and social cues critical for survival. Such extended care mirrors the long developmental period typical of intelligent mammals. Reproduction in marine mammals is internal, involving copulation, and often takes place underwater. In whales, the penis is retracted inside the body when not in use, an adaptation for streamlined swimming. Pinnipeds, like seals and sea lions, usually mate on land, with males copulating for dominance and access to harems of females. Other species, such as the dolphins and whales, engage in courtship, display an even playful mating behavior. This reproduction flexibility ensures survival across a wide range of environments. Many marine mammals have evolved delayed implantation, where fertilization pauses development until conditions are ideal for raising the young. This synchronized ensures that birth coincides with the time of abundant food and favorable climate. Gestation varies among species, but in whales it's typically around 11 to 12 months. When birth occurs, calves are delivered tail first, an adaptation that prevents drowning by allowing the newborn to remain attached to the placenta until its head emerges and it can surface for air.